Hello, my name is Lee Colazzo and I am Mrs. Reader Pants. And this is the presentation that I did on gentrification on Tuesday this week, which was November 19th, 2019, for the Shanghai Library Network here in Shanghai. I wanted to present this presentation for you as well because I know probably none of you have been able to go to the Shanghai Library Network presentations. But also because I want you to see how I presented this and give you the opportunity to, if you would like to use it, to present to your principals or your teachers or even your students about gentrification. You can use some of the ideas in this presentation. I will post the presentation in an editable form on my blog. So you can go in, you can download it, you can change it however you would like and use that to convince your principals or your teachers that gentrification is amazing and it's the greatest thing ever and I love it. So, and I hope you love it too. So I am going to share my screen with you and start the presentation. Let's see, I have this shiny new screen sharing software and it's super cool and it's working great. Awesome. Why isn't it? There we go. Okay, so this is increasing your library circulation with gentrification. I am Lee Colazzo. If you have any questions about gentrification or about anything, or you just want to say hi, you can always email me at lee@readerpants.net, and you can visit me on my blog at www.readerpants.net. So I started the presentation by asking if anyone in the room had a birthday today. And I did not expect someone to actually have a birthday, but they did. There was someone that was turning 50, so that really worked out nicely. If that probably won't work out that way for you, that was just a lucky stroke, but if you want to ask if anyone has a birthday coming up, or I was planning to use my son's birthday. He's going to be 15 in a couple of weeks. I was going to use his birthday as an example. The point is that we are going to use gentrification and grocery store analogies to talk about why gentrification is such a big deal in libraries and how helpful it is for students. So we're going to pretend that we're making our person in the room whose birthday is either coming up or is today, we're going to make a birthday cake. So I asked the participants, what do you need to make a cake? And they said things like flour and butter and sugar and eggs and candles and little paper cupcake wrappers and sprinkles and all kinds of things. So I asked, how are we going to get those things? And they said, we are going to go to the grocery store. Of course we are. This is a stocks photo of a grocery store. I didn't take this one. Most of the pictures in this presentation I did take myself, and some of them are kind of older, so they're a little blurry, but you're free to use them if you would like to show what gentrification looks like. They're from the libraries that I have gentrified myself. So, all right, we're going to the grocery store. We're looking for cake ingredients. How are we going to find those ingredients? So I asked my participants to tell me how they look for ingredients, and they said things like they would wander around the store until they found it. That would be me. I don't really look at signs so much. They might ask someone that works there for help. They might look for signs that are up hanging from the ceiling. Maybe they look at displays. Maybe there's a birthday cake display. They might look for items that are similar to what they need. Maybe they go and find the baking aisle, you know, that the baking goods are often together in the grocery store. Okay? I emphasized here that no one in the room suggested that we go to the grocery store's computer and look up the item that we need so it would tell us what aisle it was on. That's how kids are expected to find library books, but most of them are browsers, okay? It doesn't mean that if the grocery store had that set up that you could look on the computer. Some people would use it, absolutely, but a lot of people would not. They would just go and browse around and wander around, look for people that could help them and things like that, which is exactly what our students do. So we get to, we're going to buy eggs. So we get to the egg section and there's a wall of eggs and they all look the same, right? They're eggs. So how are we going to decide which eggs we want to buy? So I asked my room of participants, I had about 25 people with me in the room. And the first thing that someone said was that they would open the eggs and look and make sure that they were not broken, okay? They would look at the packaging of the eggs to make sure they weren't wet or soiled in some way or dented or crushed. So that one's really important, and I'll come back to that one. They might also look at the whether they're brown eggs or white eggs, what kind of eggs they want to buy. They might look at whether they're cage-free or if they're organic, or if they are how with the size of the eggs, they're large eggs or small eggs. They might look at the price of the eggs, because maybe we only have a certain amount of money with us, so we have to be careful. So these are all factors that go into what we buy in the grocery store, and they are factors that go into how students select their library books as well. So these are just some of the things that help us decide what we want to buy at the grocery store, and I'm going to equate these to how students look for library books, because they do exactly the same thing. It's just books instead of products to buy cake or to make a cake with. So students find library books by wandering around the library until they find what they want. This is what we do when we go to the grocery store, and we just wander around until we find the aisle that has the items that we want. If we can't find those items, students ask for help, just like we would do in the grocery store. Excuse me, can you tell me where the eggs are? Students ask for help. Can you tell me where all your scary books are, right? They might look for signs. We have labels in our library, and they can be extremely helpful. We need to label our libraries well. They look for displays of books that are eye-catching, just like we would do in the grocery store. Those displays are there for a reason. They might look for books that are similar to books that they've enjoyed in the past. Maybe there's a certain author that they really like. I love Holly Black. I will read anything she writes. It does not matter if the reviews are bad, because I love her. So I would personally look for Holly Black books, or maybe they're looking for a series that they've enjoyed and they want the next book. Or maybe they just really have discovered that they like detective fiction and they want another detective fiction story. So they look for books that are similar. So how students select books also reflects how we select things in the grocery store. For example, how many pages a book is it could be kind of like the price. This is how much this book is going to cost them in time. If they read slowly, and they probably want something shorter, because it's going to take them forever to finish a 500-page book. They also might look at how long they have to finish. Maybe it's Tuesday today, and their teacher has told them that Friday they have a book report due. And maybe the students probably put this off for a month and hasn't started the book yet, and now it's crunch time and they need to be able to finish the book quickly. So they're not going to choose a 400-page book. They need to choose something shorter. So this is also kind of like the price for them, and also how long the book is going to last them. Just like we would look in the grocery store for how long eggs are going to last. Maybe we look at the expiration date. Maybe we don't need them very long. Maybe we're planning to use all of the eggs today. That's fine, but that's important if you expect them to last a little while. They might read the summary, which is similar to reading the labels on a product, looking at the ingredients and things like that. They ask themselves, have I heard of this author before? That's kind of like the brand name. I wouldn't say publisher is a brand name. Kids don't care about the publisher. I don't even mostly notice the publisher. So, but they do look at the author sometimes, and that could be like the brand name. Do they want to buy Johnson & Johnson shampoo, for example? Or have they had a bad experience with that type of shampoo? They do the same with authors. They look at displays, of course, visually appealing displays, and those displays often have themes as well, just like a display in the grocery store might have a theme. It might be Super Bowl snacks, and all of those things are together. The condition of the book, and is it appealing on the front cover? So this has to do with the packaging, just like when we were looking at eggs. We don't want the eggs to be soiled, the packaging to be soiled in any way. We don't want it dented or crushed, because that tells us something about what's inside. And it's the same with books. It could be the greatest book in the world, but if it has crushed Cheetos in the book, or, which I've seen, sadly, or if the pages are yellowed, or the cover is just banged up, or pages are falling out, that's not appealing. You don't want to read those books either. If the book stinks, sometimes books come back and they smell like smoke. I wouldn't want to check that book out. It may be a great book, but I'm not going to find out because I don't want that book. And then, of course, we all look at what's at eye level, which is just easy to find. So keep in mind when you're doing your shelves, anything you put really low, especially for taller middle school, high school students, anything you put very low on the shelves is going to be not as visible to them as the higher items. So just be aware of that. I try to keep the bottom shelf empty and tell the students they can, if they don't know where the book goes on the shelves, they can just put it on that bottom shelf instead. Just put it there and I'll get it. So, but that's not always possible. It just depends on how much space you have. But if you can do it, you should. All right, so then I asked my participants if they've ever been to a grocery store that groups all the items by brand only. Do you ever go to a grocery store where all of the Pepperidge Farm items are together? Pepperidge Farm sells milk, they sell cookies. I don't know what all they sell. They sell lots of different things. So the answer is no. The grocery store does not group by brand. The grocery store does not group by who made the item. They group by the type of item, which is exactly what gentrification is in libraries. So gentrification, just a quick definition. Gentrification is pretty new here in China. There are some libraries that I know of that are gentrified, but it's still kind of a newer thing. It's in the US, it's been going for a little bit. So I did have to define this, but you may have to also define this for your teachers and your principals. So this photo is actually of one of my libraries here in China. And this is our genre section. So you can see the colors. We used a color-coded system. I am not a fan of circular labels. This library was labeled before I started working there. And I didn't know that I had an opinion on circular labels until I worked there. So I will talk about that in a little while, why I prefer rectangular labels. And also why I prefer colored labels. So gentrification is the reorganization of a library's fiction titles into genre section. And it is within that fiction genre section, they are still organized by author's last name. So an author that writes mystery and has written 10 mystery books, their books on the shelf are still going to be together and they're still going to be by the author's last name. April Henry is a great example. Most of her books that I can think of, maybe all of her books, I would put in mystery. So all of her books are together. What I believe gentrification is not, is taking nonfiction books out of Dewey order. I don't think that that's necessary. I think you can do it if you want to do a few random, like narrative nonfiction. I have created a narrative nonfiction section because that's a certain type of nonfiction. But just taking the books out of Dewey order, I don't think is necessary because Dewey is genrefied already. Those books are already in order by subject. So what I advocate instead is using really eye-catching signage to label your sections instead of just completely overhauling the Dewey sections. So this photo is one of my libraries here in China. This was my library in Suzhou, and I did genrify this one. And you can see that this is the 900 section, and it's very clearly labeled. I don't need to put these books in any kind of genre order. They're already done. So some reasons that you would want to genrify. These are just some test questions you can ask yourself. Number one is, do you want to do it? I think you should really be passionate about it and not just sort of going into it like sort of being dragged into it. I mean, sometimes if your administrators or your teachers or your students are asking you to do it, you may feel a bit dragged into it, but I hope that you feel passionate about it because that is really important. It's just a huge project and you need to be able to love what you're doing, at least like what you're doing. So your library circulation isn't where you would like it to be. You think that your students would read more if you had the library genrefied. And if your students are asking you for books by their genre, which they probably are, then you might want to genrify. So this question here, where are your scary books, is why I genrefied. This one question is why I genrefied way back in 2011, my library in Texas, because I got this question so much. My kids know that I really love scary books and have always loved scary books. And they would ask me all the time, where's your scary book section? And it's like, oh, there's one over there and there's one over there. And it just gets to be too much. So this is why I did it so many years ago. This photo is also from my library in Suzhou. And you can see this free verse section was very small when I first created it. I knew that I wanted to grow it, and it did grow while I was there. So it ended up being a little bit bigger, not tons, but I think both shelves were full at the time I finished. All right, so some reasons to not genreify. You really need to be able to answer yes to every one of these 5 questions. If you cannot answer yes to every one of these questions, I think you really need to consider whether this is what you really need to be doing. These are all really important. Doesn't mean you can't do it. I just think you really need to think about it very hard. If you answer a solid yes to all of these, you absolutely should genreify. So the questions. Number 1, are you passionate about gentrification? This is a huge project and you need to be really excited about it. Number 2, do you have time in your school day to dedicate to genrifying books? Guys, we work so hard. We work way outside our school day, and even when we're not actually looking like we're working, our minds are going all the time. You do not need the added pressure of having to genrify outside of your normal school day. You should not have to go to your library on weekends. You should not have to go to your library in the summer, okay, unless you're already there. So how are you going to fit this into your time that you are paid, that you are on the clock for the school? This should not be volunteer work. Not for you anyway. It can be volunteer work for parents, but not for you. So how are you going to fit this into your school day? Do you plan to work at your school until you completely finish your gentrification project? This one, I asked in the room if anyone had started working at a library where it was partially gentrified, and I had 2 people in the room who said yes. And I asked them what they did when they were partially gentrified and they started. And in both cases, they moved the genre sections out and put it back in fiction order, okay? That has been, and I knew they were going to say that because I've talked to others who were in libraries that were partially gentrified when they started, and it was frustrating for them because it just was easier to put it back in order, in fiction order. So make sure if you're going to start this project, you should not be about to retire at the end of this school year. You should not be thinking about moving to France, okay, unless you're already in France. So you need to be staying at your school until you finish your gentrification project. And I would give that at least, well, maybe about 1 school year. So if you start at the beginning of the school year in September and you think you'll finish by the end of the school year, then that's fine. But you need to finish, okay? Don't leave this unfinished gentrification stuff to the next person. Number 4, does your school administration support your decision to gentrify? You must get your admin support. I will talk more about that in a few minutes. If they do not support you, do not gentrify. You're just going to be up for a lot of trouble and a lot of wasted time. And number 5, can you afford to buy gentrification supplies with the budget that you have? Gentrification supplies are not terribly expensive, but you need a lot of them, and you should not be bankrolling this out of your own bank account. So if you don't have the money in your budget, or you don't have any money in your budget, then you need to talk to your principal and see, where can I get money for this? You should not be paying for this. It's probably several $100s, and it's just not. You don't need to be doing that. That's not what you're there for. Okay, so if you need to answer yes, a solid yes to all 5 of these, and then you are definitely ready. If you cannot answer yes to all 5, you need to really think about your decisions and if this is the best thing for you. All right, so some benefits of gentrification. This is another photo from my Suzhou library. That was such a beautiful library. The research, there's not a lot of hard data. The earliest gentrification stuff that I can find is from 2011, which was when I gentrified my first library. That was when it was kind of becoming a thing. But there's just not a lot other than anecdotal evidence from librarians like me and like Mighty Little Librarian and others who have gentrified their libraries and blogged about it. Or maybe they've written for School Library Journal or another book list or whatever, other library journals. We do write about our own experiences, but it's still anecdotal. So I have not seen a lot of hard data that's been like methodically researched for gentrification. That will probably come, but it's not there yet. It's still just pretty new. I want you to notice, I don't know if my, yeah, okay. I want you to notice right here, do you see these little blue labels on the books? And you see how nice and straight that is? I'm going to show you another photo in a little bit of labels that are on the tops of the books that are sort of jumping around because the books are different sizes. I really like putting the genre labels on just above the call number because it just looks really nice and neat. Okay, you can see these just look really neat. Okay, they're not perfect, but you'll see when I show you the other slide, it has red labels, how much they bounce around when they're on the top. Okay. Okay, so benefits. Gentrification is great for reluctant readers. This makes it really easy for them to find the books that they want. Reluctant readers are, I have this thing called book chocolate cake. So book chocolate cake is, I tell my students, if you think about the first time and you're a little baby and you're mostly eating things like strained peas and sweet potatoes, and maybe you get blueberries every now and then, and that's really exciting. But one day you have your very first taste of chocolate cake. What does your little baby face do when you have that taste? You're just like, oh, that's amazing, right? And you probably get it all over your face and you can't stop eating it. Even if you're not hungry, you're going to eat it, right? We still do that as adults, maybe without the getting it on our face, maybe we do. So your book chocolate cake is the same. It is when you find that book that you cannot put down, that you want to read it, that you think about it even when you're supposed to be doing something else, that you can't go to sleep because you've just got to find out what happens in this next chapter. Those of us who are good readers, we experience this and we know this feeling. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about book chocolate cake. You get that book all over your face, right? It's awesome. But reluctant readers and readers who have not experienced book chocolate cake, it's no wonder that they don't love it. They're still eating strained peas and sweet potatoes, and those things are okay, but they're eating those things because their body needs them and they have to, not because they especially are dying to eat those things. And they're going to stop eating them when they're full, just like reluctant readers will stop reading when they are done, right? When their project is over or their teachers told them to read to this page, that's when they stop. So the gentrification helps students find their book chocolate cake. I do talk about the book chocolate cake with my students all the time. And I've had students come to me many times and say, I found my book chocolate cake. And I'm like, yes, party. It's great. So gentrification is easier shelving as well. When you have smaller sections, you don't have this gigantic fiction section anymore. You have a smaller section, like this is my poetry section at my library in studio again. You can see again, nice straight line on these lovely gold labels. I got these gold labels on Amazon.com in the US. It is easier because it's just the section is smaller to shelve them in. You can also see really clearly if something is majorly in the wrong place, like if a realistic fiction section book were shelved here, which was a blue label at this school, it would stand out to me like a sore thumb. Students can navigate, sorry, this is my dog. Students can navigate the library in a way that is natural to them. We already talked about that with the grocery store analogies. This is how people look for things. They browse around, they look at eye level. They don't necessarily just go to the computer as something natural for them. Your circulation will increase. I've seen that over and over on lots and lots of different blog pages. That has been my experience as well. I asked the librarians in the room with me when I presented this if they had gentrified, and about 5 had, and they all said they had increased their circulation, that they had seen that, and significantly increased. Gentrification appeals to student interest. They know about genre because they know movies, and they like action movies, or they like mystery movies, or they like romantic comedy, right, rom-coms. So it does appeal to their interest. And another huge benefit that you'll see soon enough is that if you really want to get to know your collection, you genreify it. You are going to find books in your collection that you're like, where has this book been all my life? They're just amazing because you have to read summaries and you have to look at covers, and you just find a lot of little treasures that you didn't know were there, which is really fun. Okay, Maya, you need to go on, baby girl. She just stepped on my mouse. Okay, so some drawbacks of gentrification. It is time consuming and tedious. It's going to take you months. Books by the same author are sometimes split into more than one section. So if an author writes, Neil Shusterman is a great example. He writes a lot of different genre, and his books are located in different sections of the library. So students looking for Neil Shusterman are going to have to do a little walking around. But that's okay, because that gets them interested in other genre, right? If they've never read, I don't know, mystery before, and there's an author that really they really like that writes mystery, then maybe they'll try mystery. So that's a good thing. Gentrification is non-standard and inconsistent. Absolutely true, really is. But I would say the same is true with Dewey in some cases as well. Have you had a Junie B. Jones books come to you with either an E label, and then sometimes they come to you with a fiction label, right? And you have to change it. Or maybe Mythology. Mythology will come to you with 398.2 or 398, or fiction, or E, or 200. There are ambiguous genre, not being able to tell the genre of the book. I'll talk about some strategies for doing that in just a few minutes. And will students have the skills to navigate university and public libraries? I think the answer to that is yes. The important thing is that students can use a system. They know that libraries are organized by a system, and they can go to the computer and look at signs to navigate that system. Okay, it does not matter if they know the specific system. They're never going to know the specific system, even if every library uses Dewey. They're all a little different. So it's important that they know how to use Dewey, that they know how to use the catalog. And guys, honestly, university and public libraries, they don't use Dewey. They use Library of Congress. So even if they've learned Dewey perfectly in school, which they probably haven't, I didn't, they're still not necessarily going to be able to navigate the university library if that's all they know. Well, yeah, they will. If they know how to use a computer and they know how to use signs in the library, they will be able to find their books anyway. So to me, this is not a good argument, the students navigating university and public libraries. Public libraries often have genre sections too. Anyway, I am going to press pause here because I'm going to go get a drink, and then I'll come back in just a minute. Let me stop my share and... All right, I am back. It's actually been several hours since I left, but I'm back. So we will continue with our screen share. Let me go into screen share mode. Let's see. This one. Okay, so we went through the drawbacks of gentrification, and we're moving on. So my gentrification experiences. All right, I have gentrified 2 libraries, and a third one was already gentrified when I started there. It had been gentrified like a year or 2 before. So all 3 were very different experiences. So the 2 that I gentrified, one was a public middle school in Fort Worth, Texas, had about 850 students in grades 6 through 8. And this library was gentrified in 2011. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good quality pictures from that gentrification. There are some pictures on my blog that are small, but for a PowerPoint, it makes the pictures larger and they looked really bad. I don't really have pictures there, but you can go on my blog and see some smaller ones. The second library that I gentrified was after I moved to Suzhou, China. This one was, I moved to China in August of 2014, and this was a private international school in Suzhou. Suzhou is about 50 miles from Shanghai, and the school was pre-K through 12, but my division was grades 6 through 12, the secondary school, and we had 350 students, roughly, in grades 6 through 12. So this library, I moved to the school in August and started gentrifying in October. and finished gentrification just before Chinese New Year, which was in late January. So I did do both of these a bit differently, so I wanted to kind of go through the differences. This photo, the photos that have the white shelves are all from my Suzhou China library. Those just were really good photos. The lighting, it was really nice in there. We had a really big, big windows and lots of natural light coming in. So the pictures that I've shown so far, I think almost all of them, if not all of them, have been from my Suzhou library. I was so proud of that library. It looked so beautiful after the gentrification. So anyway, short story section there. So things that I've learned from my 2 library gentrifications, and then the third one where I was in one that had previously been gentrified. I prefer color labels to pictures. Reasons that you might want to use pictures instead of color is I've seen some librarians say that color, some students are colorblind and can't see the colors, they can't differentiate them. So I think that's a great reason to use picture labels if that's what you would like to do. Some people use picture labels that are also color-coded, so that's also something you can do. I personally prefer color labels because I can see them from far away. So if a student asks me, this particular section is the adventure section at my library here in Shanghai, and I can just point to the section and say, yes, it's that yellow-orange section right there. And it's just really clear and easy for them to see. If you use picture labels, they're just smaller and they're not as clear from across the library. So it's just a preference. It's not that either one is better than the other. So if you prefer picture labels, that is just fine. It's just what I like is the color. I mentioned I prefer the genre labels at the bottom of the spine. So I showed you those pictures that had the genre label right above the call number at the bottom of the spine, and it looked like it was a nice row. And these here, you can see that the labels are pretty even for these, but down here, these books are more different heights down here as well. The books are different heights, and here, I just think it looks messy, and it just, I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible, but I don't like it as much as I liked the ones on the bottom. I also wouldn't have known this except for this library that I went to that was already gentrified, used circular labels, and I had always used rectangular labels previously. And I learned that I prefer the rectangles to the circles. And that is because I've always, in my gentrified library, all of them have been secondary libraries. And secondary young adult books tend to be thicker in the spines. So when you put a circular label on them, it doesn't cover the whole spine. So you can see there, you can see the entire circle. Whereas in the rectangular labels, it covers the whole spine from side to side, and I just think it looks neater on the shelf. So again, it's just a preference thing. Neither one is right or wrong. It's just what you like. I just wanted to tell you what I like because you might look at that and say, yeah, I do. I understand that the rectangular labels might look a little nicer. I also prefer to get students very involved in the process. When I was in Texas, I had my students, I had about 10 8th grade library aides who were amazing and helped me. Shout out to those guys, they were incredible. They helped me to gentrify the entire library. It became a huge project for all of us. We became very close as a result of this project. I had had 8th grade library aides before and after that, and it was these library aides that really stand out to me as I just knew them so well because we worked on this project together, and it was just a huge project. I also did my process in a couple of ways that I'll talk about, but my students in the first school, in the middle school in Texas, were much more involved than in the gentrification of the library than not just my 8th graders, but like all of my students. Than they were at my school here in China. And part of that is because I didn't know my students as well here in China. I had just moved to the school in August. I was in a new country with all this new language around me. I had never lived overseas before, and that was kind of overwhelming. And then on top of that, I didn't know my kids. And on top of that, I decided to gentrify pretty early on, just a couple of months after I got there. And that was a very new thing. I didn't know anyone in Shanghai that were in China Suzhou or Shanghai. None of the librarians that I knew had done this before. A lot of them had not heard of it, so it was a really weird and radical thing. So anyway, I think my first gentrification experience was much more involved with students that had been at that school for a couple of years before I gentrified. So made a big difference. So where do you want to start in your process? The very first thing, I say this a lot, this is in my group for Facebook for the monthly challenge. I frequently talk about keeping the communication open with your principal or your head administrators or whatever you have at your school. Do not start to gentrify without getting your admin team behind you. I have been very lucky as a librarian, and in most of my schools, most of my administrators have been incredibly supportive of the library and of me, even if my ideas seemed kind of out there. Sometimes they did. They trusted me to do what I needed to do for the library because they knew that even if it sounded weird, I somehow made it work anyway. So, but getting your administration behind you is really necessary. This is a huge challenge for your library. It's a large change. It's a big project, and you're going to have some mess. That's why I put this messy books here. You're going to have some mess in the library, and you may have some teachers who come in and they don't like that you're doing this. They don't like change. They don't like the mess. So they may complain to the principals, and the principals, if they don't know about it, they're going to be like, what are you doing? They're going to take that teacher's side. But, you know, and hopefully they'll come talk to you and you can turn them around, but you don't want to have to do that. Let's just start with getting the admin team behind you. They also need to be on your side because you're going to need time to do this. And if you can get it, they may be able to help you to get some parent volunteers, which would be really good. Now, parent volunteers aren't always great with things like this. You need to find someone you trust. I have had great experiences with parent volunteers. Some of my parent volunteers over the years have become very good friends of mine, who I am friends with 10 to 15 years later. Some of them quite close. So parent volunteers are great, but be careful because sometimes they are, make sure it's someone you trust and that you trust them to make good decisions about gentrifying. Your meeting with your principal should be, you should have at least 2. The first one should be the initial approval of gentrification. So this is where you would tell your principals and talk to them about what gentrification is, what the benefits are, and why you want to do it. And then the second meeting, so you'll get their approval. The second meeting I want you to do is to go over the details of how you plan to do this. Show them the materials that you've chosen, so show them the labels that you have chosen, show them how you're going to do it, and show them the details of your plan. The reason that this meeting is important is because there may be details of your plan that you may not be aware of that they want you to change. So if you've already ordered your supplies and then you meet with the principal, and for some reason maybe you wanted to go with color labels and the principal prefers you to go with picture labels, you've already ordered your color labels. So have this meeting before you even order anything, but have a good detailed plan. It shows your principal that you are you know what you're doing, that you've really thought about this, and that it's not just some sort of fly-by-night type of thing that you're doing. They really need to understand how long it's going to take. This is a months-long process. It could take an entire school year or maybe even a little longer than that. Your principals need to understand that it is not going to be finished by next Friday. Sometimes they will think that it will. It sounds to them like pretty quick, right? They're just sticking some stickers on some stuff. No, it's not. There's a lot of things that take a lot of time. Cataloging is something principals don't always understand how much time that takes. So make sure that they know this is going to take months and it's going to take a lot of time. Second one, after you get your initial approval, you need to come up with a plan. So you have tons of decisions to make. I have in the Facebook challenge group this month for November, and this is also available on my blog. So you don't have to be in the Facebook group to get it. You can go to the November challenge and find a worksheet of the plan. It is in the Genrefication challenge number 1 packet, which is on the blog page. So come up with a plan, go through those decisions. in the worksheet. Some of them include things like, should you weed? You probably should. You're going to need some more shelf space for gentrification. Just because it's the same number of books and they fit on your shelves, you are going to need extra shelf space because your genres are not going to perfectly fit your shelves. You don't want to start a new genre on the bottom shelf. Okay, you need to start it on a new shelf. You need to decide when you're going to weed, what you're going to do with those weeded books. That is the challenge of weeding, isn't it? What to do with the books. And decide if you need to order more shelving. If you're not going to, if you need to weed and also get more shelving. You need to know when you're going to do this. How will you ensure that you finish your gentrification in a decent amount of time? You should not have your gentrification project go on and on for years. You're going to run out of energy. Your kids are going to be like, when is it going to be finished? Just try and get it done as quickly as you can and efficiently. So think about how you're going to do that in a timely manner. This is another picture with the circular labels from my library here in Shanghai. And this one's not as uneven as the other photo was, but on the top right here, you can see there's some uneven labels. So if they were all here just above the call number, they would be a lot straighter. So it's just a preference thing. So you need to select your genre section. So this part's kind of fun. You need to decide what genre sections you want. I recommend about 15 to 20 genre to start. This is a list of the ones I used at my school in Suzhou. And you see that one circle label sticking out there. That is because I could not find any more rectangular labels that I had not already gotten. I had to buy those here in China, and I just was new in China and did not know how to navigate Taobao, which is our major online marketplace here. I probably would be able to find them now just fine. But at that time, I had to get circles, and I hated that circle section. It was steampunk, and that was a section that I did a book talk on, and my kids really were interested in it, so I made a small section of steampunk. Ask your students and your teachers what genre they would like to see, and ask them how they would name the genre. For example, do they want it to be a supernatural genre? Do they want to call it paranormal? Do they like thriller? Do they like science fiction or horror? All of those kind of blend in together. So what kinds of genre and what language do they want to use? Really ask them, and you're going to be stuck with these genre names. So take your time to decide what they are. I wanted to point out as well, right here on romance chick lit, I would not call that section this today, even though that's what the publishing industry calls romance and they call chick lit. I today would call this rom-com, romantic comedy section. So even though it's not always comedy, sometimes it's just romantic drama, but I call it that because that's what the movies that the kids watch that they like. If they like this genre, that's what they're called, rom-com. And I just really like that better than labeling it chick lit. That kind of makes me, it always made me a bit uncomfortable calling it chick lit because I have boys that read that section and I want to turn them off to that section. So that's something to consider as well. Okay, then you need to decide how you're going to designate the genre in the catalog. So there's lots of ways to do this. Some librarians use copy categories. Some use sublocation, which I did not mention there, but someone mentioned in my presentation the other day, sublocation. Those are in Destiny, but I'm sure that Alexandria and Oliver and other systems have something similar to that. If you're using color labels, do you want to add the color to the copy category? So I have seen libraries that do this, and it's fine. I personally do not add the color because I'd rather just have the genre. The color is meaningless to me. It's nice to know the color in the library that we're in, but that color may not always be that color for a mythology. If it's red, but they may go to another library and red is mystery. So I don't personally put the color in there. I just put the genre. You need to decide how you're going to put the genre in the catalog. So I personally use the call number for designating it instead of, I didn't use sublocation or copy categories because to me that's not how my students are looking things up. So I actually put it in the call number so that when they looked up the book that they wanted, it said right there, instead of fiction, I changed it to mythology because I no longer had a gigantic fiction section. I didn't have a fiction section at all. I had a mythology section. I had a romance section. I had a realistic fiction section. So that's what that section is called. So I just took the F out and made it mythology. So this particular book obviously is The Lightning Thief, or one of Rick Riordan's mythology books. Another way to do it, you can put the genre at the end of the call number. So you can leave the fiction there with RIO and then put mythology in parentheses or in brackets. You can put the genre color at the end of the call number. I don't personally like this one because the genre is not there. I think the genre needs to be there, but I've seen this where they say FRIO and then they just put the color in parentheses. It's the red section. And you might also put the genre and the color in the end of the call number. So you could do FRIO, mythology red. I think the first two are my favorites that you do what works for your library. Okay, the next thing you need to decide is how you're going to designate the genre on the book. Do you want to use color labels? Do you want to use picture labels? I've talked a little bit about that. I do have some free picture labels for you on my website, readerpants.net. And you can go on Teachers Pay Teachers. They are free for the month of November. I may leave them free for December, or I may create something new that'll be free for December for genre. I'm not sure at this point. It's busy. We'll see. So yeah, you can go grab those if you are watching this in November 2019. They are free. After that, sorry guys, they're not going to be free. They took a long time to make, so eventually they're not free. But you need to decide how you're going to do that and where you're going to put your stickers. And then you need to make a list of supplies. So in my packet that is in the challenge number 1 document on my blog or on the Facebook page, you can find a list of supplies that I give you. I bought these at Amazon. This is actually a photo of genre labels that I've used. That one in the middle there is silver. It kind of got stuck there coming out. These are called color chrome, I think, labels. So I can't find them here in China, but I really like them. So I've been buying them when I go home to the US, and I order them from Amazon and bring them back with me. So where are you going to get your supplies, and how are you going to pay for those supplies? At a minimum, you need to have your genre labels. You need to have a different label for each genre. Try to keep them as different as you can from one another. Don't do 2 royal blue labels if you can help it. I want you to also order at least 10% more labels than you think you'll need. So if you have a section that you're just going to have to guess on this. I mean, but if you have like fantasy section, you know that that's going to be a larger section than, say, mythology. So maybe budget for a lot more fantasy labels versus just a few mythology labels. You need label protectors is my preferred way to do it, but you can also use book tape. Please do not use Scotch tape. It just does not stick. It's not going to stick long term. You're going to be sticking those labels all the time. Labels will fall off. You're going to need scissors to cut your tape and maybe trim your labels. These particular rectangular labels are quite long. They work great. I like that they're long because they work really well for books that are really thick, 500 pages or so for young adult books. But I can trim them down, and I did trim them down for smaller books, so they were great. And then I get double labels. A large shoebox for ordering your labels. Sorry, a large shoebox for storing your labels and your supplies. You need something to keep all that together in. And then you will need a computer and a scanner to use to put these items in your computer. I suggest wireless if you can do it, much easier. And then next, you're going to meet with your administration. You've made your plan. This is where I was talking about you have your second meeting. Again, you don't want to have a big mess on the floor like what I've got there. They need to know that there will be sometimes a mess, and that's part of the process. So show the supplies that you plan to use. Make sure that they approve the picture labels versus color labels and how you're doing them. This does show your administration that you know what you're doing, you're taking it seriously, you've planned well, and that can help you later if you have any problems. make sure that your administrators know when you plan to start and when you plan to finish, and that they also know that your finish time may need to be tweaked because you're starting this from scratch and you don't really know how long it's going to take. It's all an estimate. So do the best that you can to give them the best estimate, but let them know that it may still be longer or shorter. You just can't know. Probably be longer. And then have this meeting before you order anything. Okay, make sure you get your admin on your side. They can be great or they can be really hard. So get them on your side. And then you're gonna start genrifying. Once you have the all clear, you can just start. This is as easy as just picking up picking a shelf, picking up the first book, and just starting. So what you need to do to genrify, you need to put the sticker on it. You need to look at the books and decide the genre. Then you put the sticker on it, and then you change the label in the computer. And then you can either move them when everything is genrified, or you can move them one at a time, like a section at a time. This is another good example of these labels at the top here. You can see these books are various sizes. It just bugs me. I don't like it. Okay, the process of genrifying. Once you have made all your decisions, you can genrify, and I've done this in a couple of different ways that I sort of mentioned just now, but I'll go into more detail. The first one is what I did at my Texas school. So these were very different methods. The first one, I took 6 cases of books. So a case of books is just, it had 2 or 3 shelves, it was double-sided, and it was on wheels. That's one case. So I would roll a case over to the computer, and I did 6 cases that I genrified. So I would genrify the book and then put it back on the shelf. Genrify, put it back next to the book. Once I did 6 cases, I took all the books off the cases, those 6, and organized the cases on the tables by genre. So I had tables, 15 tables of books piled up, okay? So it was messy. Then I took those books off the tables, put them back on the cases in their genre groups, and voila, I had a very small section of the library genrified. And then I went and did 6 more cases and did the same thing. So the problem with this was that I had a mess in the library for months. I did. There were always books piled up on the tables. I was constantly moving the library around. I got a lot of exercise. I burned a lot of calories. I was moving books, moving shelves all the time. So what I liked about this one, though, is that my kids were so excited about it. They love messes. If every time they came to the library, there were books piled everywhere and things moved around, they loved it. They thought it was so cool. They were asking me if they could help me genrify and what they could do, and I was able to put them to work. So it was really, really, really great. So I preferred this method. So the benefits to this one were that the biggest one was that the students were just really excited about gentrification, that they wanted to help, and the library was changing all the time. The drawbacks, this took a little bit longer. I don't think it took a ton longer. I don't remember the exact timeline for genrifying when I did it the first time. It was maybe 5 months, something like that. And the second time it was like 4 months. So then there was a lot of book moving. I was pretty physically exhausted. I was schlepping books all day, moving shelves around. But I did enjoy this method because the kids were so excited. And as a result, I was excited. The second one, when I came to Suzhou, I thought I would do this a little more methodically. So I genrified all the books in the fiction section, but left them in the fiction order until about 90% of the books were finished with gentrification. So that means that I did not change them in the computer until I was ready to move them, because they were still in their fiction order for a long time. So I needed to be able to find them. So another thing that I did with this one is, and I think this is a good idea no matter how you do it, is each day I chose a genre color and kept it in my pocket all day. And as I would have 5 minutes between class, or I was monitoring lunch or whatever, I would walk around and just look for books that I knew were the mystery label that day. That was my genre of the day. So that was kind of cool, and I would do that with either method. And so of the two methods, oh, let's go through the benefits. So the benefits here were that the books were easy to find throughout most of the gentrification process because they remained in fiction order. So that was a problem when you have books piled up all over the table and someone's looking for the books, it's very difficult to find. It can be. And it was a little bit faster as well. But I have to say that the biggest drawback for this is a huge drawback for me, is that the kids just weren't as into it. Now, I don't know if that's because I was new in the library and they didn't know me as well, or that this was just so foreign to them that they had never seen anything like this before. The library didn't change a whole lot during the gentrification process until the end when I started moving the books around. And so I don't know, the kids just weren't as excited, and as a result, I wasn't excited. It felt like it went on longer than the other one did, even though it didn't. And I don't know, I would do it the first way again if I did it again. Look at these nice, neat, in order, straight rows, these genre labels, these blue ones here. Just looks so nice. So the steps you need to genrify just one book. Some of the librarians I talked to did this a little bit differently than I do, but this is my method. I would look at the book to determine the genre. There are a lot of ways that you can do this that I'll talk about in a minute. But if you're looking at a book and there's a dragon on the cover, obviously that's going to be fantasy. I mean, that's pretty much going to be fantasy. Some books are really obvious. Some are more difficult. So we'll talk about that in a second. The next thing I do is label the book, put the genre label on it. Then I catalog, change the copy categories in the catalog. This is using method 1 just a minute ago, where I move everything 6 shelves at a time. And then I shelve the book into the genre section. So one of the hardest things about genrifying is being able to decide what the genre is, because you can only pick one. So there's several things that you can use for this tools. The first thing is just looking at the cover. A lot of times the cover will just be obvious what it is. If there's a body on the cover with a chalk outline and crime scene tape, that's probably going to be a mystery. If you read the blurb on the back, sometimes that'll give you some clues. And also, if you look at the verso is the page that's on the back of the title page. And if you look there, sometimes it'll actually say the genre. Tidal wave is a, I'm sure you are familiar with tidal wave. You've been a librarian for a while, but some new people might not be. Tidal wave is tidalwave.com, and they have genre tags on their books, which I'll show you a screenshot of that in a second. But this is a free account, but you do need to have an account with Tidal Wave in order to do that. So I'll show you that in just a minute. And then also Goodreads. I put here VPN needed because I'm in China. You don't need a VPN if you're anywhere outside of China for Goodreads, but in China you do. And then, of course, ask your students where they would put the genres. So go over some of those in more detail. So this is a photo of where I asked my students what genre they thought that this was. So this is Stephen King's book, The Outsider, which I understand is a movie, or is going to be a movie. I don't know the movies as well, since I've been in China. I'm not on top of that. But I have read The Outsider. So I took The Outsider, and all I did is I just made a T-chart. I was thinking this could go into science fiction, or it could go into horror. This also could go into supernatural or paranormal if I wanted to do a third one on there. And then the students could just vote by doing a tick mark on the sticky note, and whichever one got the most tick marks that would be the one I would put it in. So a great example of this would be zombie books. So when I was genrifying my Texas library, we had this whole discussion. Like, this was not just a one-day discussion. This was a big discussion with many students at many different times. And we talked about whether zombies should be in science fiction or in horror. That had a lot of zombie books, and they were popular. And I, as a horror reader and a science fiction reader and a zombie book reader, zombies go in science fiction. They just do. That's how they're made scientifically through a plague or through some sort of science problem gone wrong. They're science fiction. But my students voted to put zombies in horror. So that's where they went. That's where they were gonna look for horror, for zombies, so we put them there. Even if they were funny zombie books, they went into horror because that's where we decided to put zombies. So to make these decisions as a school, your kids may choose differently from me. My own kids chose differently from me, but I did lessons on this. We talked about why I say zombies are science fiction and why some students are saying they're horror. We just made it a thing and they learned from it, so it was great. The bonus to doing this is when you have a table, I dedicated a table for this when I didn't know what genre I wanted to put a book in. I would do a sticky note on the book and then put pencils and markers and things on the table so they could vote. And the table would have, at any given time, might have 15, 20 books on it. And inevitably, those books got checked out because the students were handling them and looking at them and reading the blurbs and trying to decide what they wanted them to be. So it's a sneaky way to get some books checked out in your library. Works really, really well. Okay, so a couple of other resources. You can use my blog. Our November and December challenge is gentrification. So if you want to do the challenge, we have, I think, 7 tasks. There are 2 different challenges. One is for if you want to gentrify, like you want to start, you're ready to go. That's challenge number 1. And then challenge number 2 is if you're not ready to gentrify, or you don't want to, or you're already gentrified, that one is promoting genre in your library. If you complete the tasks for any of the tasks that you do, even if you only do 2 of them, you can enter a rafflecopter drawing for a prize in December. I'm going to give away 5 books in a genre of your choice to 2 winners in December. So you get an entry for each of the tasks that you do, and I will do those drawings on December 18th. So you have until December 18th, 2019, if you're seeing this later. But you don't have to, you do have to join the Facebook group to do the rafflecopter drawings because that's where I have the links. But if you just want to do the task on your own without entering the challenge, that's all available on my blog. So if you go to www.readerpants.net, and up in the corner on the right side, there is a tab called November Challenge. Just click on that and you can see everything that I have. I also have lots of links and things to other librarian blogs that have talked about gentrification, including some that have decided not to gentrify, and they talk about their reasons. All of this is free. You don't have to pay anything for it. So, okay. So we mentioned Goodreads a minute ago. I use Goodreads every day. I love Goodreads. It's one of the first tabs I open in the morning. When I open up Destiny, I open up Goodreads, and I open up Tidal Wave. So goodreads.com is a free website. It's kind of like Facebook for readers. I'm sure many of you have used this site and are familiar with it. This is great for finding things like the next book in a series. And on the side, they have genre. I'll show you a screenshot in a minute. You can look at book reviews, summaries, author information, and book lists. I mean, there's trivia, never-ending trivia. I've done like 3,200 questions on the never-ending trivia. It's super fun. It's book trivia. We love book trivia. So this is a screenshot of White Bird by R.J. Palacio, which I just recently read. It's great. And over on the side there, circled in red, you see the different genre. So it says 114 users have said that it's a graphic novel, which it is. So you can see where people have, this is just people who have read the book or have voted for it. I guess they haven't maybe all read it, but they can vote for where the book might go in a genre section, what genre to call it. It's also historical fiction. So if you don't want to have a graphic novel section, you can, I mean, graphic novel is just a format, really. It's not a genre. So you can put your graphic novels with your genre if you would like to. I don't do that, but you could. Some people do. And then Tidal Wave is another one that I open that tab first thing in the morning. And they now provide genre tags at the top of book records. And you can actually email your Follett rep, and they can help you run different reports on your genre and help you to sort your genre. This was not something that was available to me back when I first gentrified. At least I didn't know about it in 2011, but I think that would be pretty helpful. They can run a genre report and see, like when you're ordering labels, you can maybe see how many, an estimate of how many fantasy books you have or how many science fiction or whatever. So I'll show you a picture of this in a second. This book, Light It Up, I just finished. It's great. Oh my gosh. Heckler Magoon, she's something else. And so here is Light It Up, and if you go down to these tags, you can click on these little tags and it'll take you to more books like that. But down here it says common genre and topic. Notice that it doesn't say anything about realistic fiction, which is what this is. That's actually up here, right there. So look at all of the tags, don't just look at the genre, because there's actually not really, these are not really genre, these are more themes. So you can go and click on realistic fiction and see more realistic fiction titles. And that's it, so there's my credits. So let me go out of screen share. All right, so that is the whole presentation that I did on Tuesday for the Shanghai Library Network. I will post this to SlideShare and link it on my blog page for this, so go to the November challenge, and also in my Facebook group for the monthly challenge so that you'll have that. I'm proud of you for sticking with me this long. I think this has been about an hour, which is about what it took me on Tuesday as well. But if you have any questions, again, just please feel free to email me, lee@readerpens.net. I'm happy to help you. I love helping librarians, especially new librarians, with challenges. We're quite alone in our field, and we do need to reach out to other librarians in our districts and other librarians online, because sometimes there aren't librarians in our districts. Sometimes we're the only one. So please feel free to reach out. I love to hear from you. And best of luck to you with your gentrification projects. And I will talk to you soon.